everybody for a great season. I say it every year. We'll see you right back here, same place, same time for the four-peat next year. Great job. Go Panthers.
Good evening, Parish Panther fans. Welcome to Waco ISD Stadium. Brian Shackelford here with you, alongside my broadcast partners Jim Dixon and Forrest Baldwin. And tonight we have some special pregame coverage for you prior to the TAPS Division I State Championship game. First of all, we'd like to bring you a special interview that I had about a week and a half ago with Parish Episcopal head coach Dan Novikov. We sat down and talked for a while, and some unique insight into Coach Novikov. And, Forrest, you've known the man for a little while, and it's very rare to get him to talk, and I think this will be a great interview coming up. Give us some insight as to the mind workings of Coach Dan Novikov.
I got to tell you, Brian, I'm extremely excited about the interview coming up. And to your point, yes, to get the man to spend 90 minutes with you in an interview is unheard of. So congratulations, and I think we're really going to get a great look into the man that is Dan Novikov.
And, Jim, some insight into the offensive mind of what Dan Novikov has done over the years, coming up as Parish offensive coordinator and now in his 6th year as head coach for the Panthers.
Well, I think he just mixes it up. He uses the tools that he has available to him. He's great at developing talent, and he's proven that over the last 6 years.
And, folks, let's take a look at that interview now with Parish Episcopal head coach Dan Novikov.
Now let's rewind a little bit here. Let's kind of get the big picture of how you got started in all this. You're a local man. Played your high school ball here at St. Mark's.
Yeah.
And then walk-on at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about the walk-on experience there at Notre Dame and how that worked out for you. What made you decide to walk on and for the Fighting Irish?
My dad played there, and he was I think he was an All-American there, but he was a really good player there from 68 to 72. So I grew up. My mom also went there, so I grew up not really knowing that there was any other college around other than Notre Dame. So I always wanted to go there, always wanted to play there. I went there as a kid, went to games as a kid, was there in 1992 when they beat Florida State, was there in 88. So I always had an affinity for Notre Dame. And then my senior year of high school, they had a quarterback committed that was C.J. Leak, Chris Leak's brother. And at the last minute, he flipped to Wake Forest, and they called and said, we don't have a scholarship for you, but you come be the only quarterback in the class and walk on. I said, sure. At the time, I thought I was either going to go to SMU or Brown, but obviously when you get that opportunity and it's a childhood dream, it's something you can't overlook or pass up.
Oh, no. The opportunity to stand on that stadium and look across the end zone and see touchdown Jesus, you can't pass that opportunity up.
No.
Especially with a lifelong commitment to Notre Dame, it sounds like.
No, I spent 4 years, 3 of them basically being on the scout team, and finally got to play my last year for about, I think it was like 17 minutes. I can't remember the exact time and letter, but people always ask me, would you do it all over again? And absolutely. I think that experience, you go from being the star on your high school football team, and having everything center around you, to being the low man on the totem pole. So, it really helped in coaching too, to understand the psychology of every player on the team and to be at both ends of the spectrum, kind of taught me what it's like and how you should really manage a football team.
And valuable experience indeed. I know that as a head coach here in high school, is that something that you help these young men with, that you're helping them find an opportunity at the next level for those that, have the opportunity to move on? Is that something that you kind of mentor with them before they take that next step to college ball about, the transition from being the big guy here in high school to basically starting from scratch in a major college program?
Yeah, but I think being the big guy, if you're a 5-star recruit or you're one of these guys that we've had, Andrew Paul, one of these guys, you don't need a ton of mentoring from me. Everybody's telling you what you want to hear, and everybody's getting you, you're going to be, somebody special there. It's different when you go to walk on because you're kind of they treat you like you're lucky to be on the team. So that's a totally different experience than what somebody who's being recruited, as a 5-star athlete's having. So, I think the really valuable perspective is for the current kids on the team that aren't necessarily the star on the team right now, being able to talk to them and share the experiences I had as, being the low person on the totem pole, and how you work your way up from there has been valuable.
Right. Well, that's one thing I've always been curious about, seeing, looking at this process from afar, as an announcer, in this particular role as a journalist, if you will, is you see how some of these very highly touted 4-star, 5-star recruits, they make the transition. They're successful in the college game, and some of them even move on to play on Sundays. But then you see some of these folks that were fantastic talents at the high school level, and they don't seem to cut it in college. I mean, is that a breakdown somewhere? Or
I think a lot of it is just luck and opportunity. You look at guys all over the country, and nobody can break it down to a science. If they could, they'd be making tons of money. So it's just a lot of it depends on the opportunity you get, the team that's around you, the circumstances, and that's usually how people catch their breaks. Peyton Manning tells that story about him and Brandon Stewart were both at Tennessee at the same time, and he locked him out of the quarterback room, and that's how he got to start. And then the rest is history. So, all those kind of weird things happen, and it just circumstances and fall into something, and next thing you know, he's Peyton Manning. Right,
and then also you see the flip side of that too, where you see recruits that perhaps were not so highly touted, someone who may walk on, and college ball is where they blossom, and then they do get an opportunity at the next level.
Right. I think that's a much harder route, just because there's so much money tied up in scholarships. So a scholarship player is going to get the more benefit of the doubt. If you're a walk-on player, you may get one chance. You got to seize on that chance. And I think it's a lot harder to break through as a walk-on player. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it is hard.
Right. And then the path for you then, after graduating from Notre Dame in 2003, you moved immediately into coaching? Or?
No, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a business major, and I didn't really like business. I didn't know what that really meant. Couldn't really picture myself sitting
that's work.
I couldn't really picture myself sitting behind a desk or making sales calls or being an accountant or anything like that. So I just kind of asked myself, what is it I really enjoy being around? And I kept gravitating towards football, and mainly high school football. And so after a while, I think I took a year to kind of figure it out. I got a job and just started coaching and fell in love with it from that day on.
So that brings you to Parish. You joined the squad here, or the coaching staff here, as the offensive coordinator.
No, so
before that, even
2005, I was at Bishop Lynch as the quarterbacks coach.
Right.
I was there 2 years, and then I went to Miami of Ohio. Came here for a year, then went to Miami of Ohio for 2 years, and was at the Cowboys. Well, Pitt briefly for about 6 weeks, then the Cowboys, and then back here. So that's kind of the coaching stints I've had.
And then coming back here, you started back on your second stint with Parish in 2011. 2011.
Yeah, in the fall of 2011 as the offensive coordinator.
And then talk about that experience. You come into Parish for the second time, so you had a little bit of familiarity with the organization, and working your way up as an offensive coordinator, and then getting the opportunity to move into the head coaching position.
Yeah, when I came here, I came back. I was in development. So I was doing 2 jobs. I was raising money and being the offensive coordinator. I didn't really know whether I wanted to go back to college football or pro football or stay in high school football. But when I got here, obviously I fell in love with the place. So, being the offensive coordinator is a totally different experience than being the head coach. You're more focused just on the X's and O's and the football, and you're not having to deal with all the external things, kids getting in trouble, kids' grades, all that kind of stuff that goes into the head coaching aspect of it. You don't have to worry about as the offensive coordinator. It's much more pure coaching football, so I can sit there and just scheme all day, every day, all week, and I'm not focused on any of the other stuff that goes on. Now I'm doing both jobs. I'm still coordinating the offense, but Coach Faulkner takes a ton of that burden off of me, and having to do the head coaching role, so it's different. You don't have as much time, and you're seeing the whole picture versus just my little side of the ball and how those guys are doing. I'm the defense's biggest fan. If we hold them to 0 points, I'm the happiest guy in the world. I'd rather win 3-0 than 65-62, So, you're kind of looking at the whole picture versus just my little slice of the pie.
Oh, no, I felt the same way. Not having anywhere near the experience that you have in, coaching football, this stuff, but just coaching my sons growing up. And for some reason, I always found myself gravitating toward the defensive side of the ball. And that was always my philosophy is, guys, if we don't score, the worst thing that happens is a tie. Or if we don't let them score, the worst thing that happens is a tie.
That's right.
So I can definitely agree with you there about being the defense's biggest fan. And we'll get to that in a little while about how the defense has been a huge contributor for the Panthers here in the 2022 campaign. So moving into the head coaching position, you take over as head coach.
Right.
And start to really build, because it's your key to help build the program at that point. Like you said, putting on the extra hat, getting away from just the X's and O's. And talk about that transition when they come to you and say, Coach Novikov, we want you to take the big chair.
Yeah, so it was a different challenge because at the same time we had moved up to 6A.
Right.
So my experience as the offensive coordinator was in 5A, so it's a little bit different, especially at that time. 6A was really robust, and we had just moved up, and so we were struggling a little bit. So it was almost like taking over a new program. The previous coach did a heck of a job. Obviously, they won 2 state championships, but it was at a different level, and so we were trying to get our sea legs underneath us about how we're going to compete in 6A at being the smallest. We have the smallest enrollment of any 6A football team in TAP. So that was really the biggest challenge, was going about figuring out, all right, what's going to make us successful? How can we build this program to a championship program and do it quickly? Because people don't have a ton of patience. Everybody says
that's the one
everybody
thing
here says
really,
wins and losses don't matter.
Right.
And I say, all right, watch. When we start losing, they're going to want me fired. So, winning is a critical part of any program. And so we were trying to turn it quickly. And, we got lucky that Preston Stone happened to be an upcoming freshman, and we had a relationship. So that was a huge piece of building the program. And, I kind of feel like him and I did it together. And those kids that were that freshman class with him, we only had 5 seniors at the time I took over, which is about, 20 less than we have now. So, it was a really small group. We were just trying to put it all together and come up with some sort of competitive program that we could put out on the field that year, which they did. And then the rest, once that group got to be sophomores, we kind of took off.
Well, let's take a little bit here and talk about the season as we go through. I don't want to say we could probably do an entire show on each game of the season, but I don't want to wear you out like that. But we'll go through each one here real quickly. You talked about Aledo, first game of the year, 10-time defending 10-time UIL state champions. Aledo comes in here, and I was reading bulletin boards, Facebook, and everybody was just talking about how you were going to get killed.
Right.
How Parish was just going to get killed. When are they going to pull the starters? Oh, probably when Aledo is up by 50. Things like this. You go out and I'll say it, you shock the world, 20-17.
24-17.
Or 24-17. Thank you. So talk about the moment at the end of that game, 26 seconds to play. Daniel Demery knocks down that 4th down pass, and what's going through your mind when you realize you've just taken down the Aledo Bearcats?
I wasn't surprised because I know what kind of kids we have. I know people call me crazy, but I knew our kids could play with them. It was just a matter of could they overcome the psychological aspect of that's Aledo. If you take the decal off their helmet, they're not any different than anybody else that we've played.
Right.
We got a bunch of good football players too, and that was kind of the point of doing that. Was a lot of what we heard over the years was, but who do they play? Who do they play? They only play in TAPs, and so the point of doing that was, to try to prove to everybody, hey, you may think this little TAPS football league isn't anything, but it's better than what you think, and we're about to prove it here. And so that's why we set out to do what we did.
Right. I had talked about it on several of our broadcasts. You scheduled a murderer's row for the first 5 weeks of the season. You've got Aledo, Bel Air Episcopal, who, all 5 of these teams
are perennial powers. All 5 of these teams have won a state championship within the last 3 years. We talk about week 2. We go down to Houston, Bel Air Episcopal. The only game of the year so far that you played on this year so far, and probably will be, grass.
Knowing that you played on grass. You get down there, it's a muggy, horrible, wet, rains during the game, soggy field, had been raining all day. And I noticed that field had a pretty good crown to it as well. And Forrest Baldwin did the call on the game with me. He was out there before the game. He said, between the numbers and the sidelines, it's just slop.
Right.
So talk about the Bel Air game, and specifically, I want to get your thoughts on it, but also I want to ask you about, it seemed to me like there were 2 different Parish teams. You guys came out just lightning quick in the opening, the first quarter plus. Then you have the 30-minute lightning delay. What changed when they came back out after the lightning delay? Because that was a pretty close game from them that point forward.
One, they're better than people. At the time, I don't think people realized how good of a football team that was. They ended up being a really good football team. They played in the championship of their division. We had just come off of a emotional, thrilling win over Aledo, and so that's a worry as a coach. Anytime you play that and then you go play Bel Air Episcopal, the kids, you're not going to naturally have the focus you had for Aledo. We had been working towards that Aledo game all summer. all spring, and then that happens, it's over. You got to try to reload and play again,
Right.
the next Friday. So you had that going into it. Then you had the weather element, the grass field element. A win is a win. You never want to say you didn't play well when you win a game, but we didn't. We didn't play up to our capabilities. And we got out to an early lead, and I think our kids thought, hey, we're invincible, we're unbeatable, and that team didn't respect them. They didn't care what they had done the week before. They were coming to beat them, and I think that was a good experience for us to realize that, and it's carried through the rest of the year. We're going to get everybody's best shot now because we are Parish, and so if we don't show up ready to play, we're liable to get beat because we're everybody's Super Bowl at this point. It didn't used to be that way. Now it's that way. It's kind of the same way we looked at Aledo. Everybody looks at Parish the same way. They want the opportunity to knock them off. And so our kids had to learn that from that game, that when you show up, everybody's going to be trying to beat you, and you got to be ready to play.
Yeah, and then to backtrack for just a second, then you talked about preparing all summer for Aledo. Did you schedule that game as the first game purposely, or did that just kind of that's how it worked out?
A lot of it just worked out about what weeks they have open, what weeks you have open, and a lot of it also is just who's available. We ran out of people to play, so it's kind of twofold. Those were the teams that were available, but also, like I told you, get tired of hearing everybody say, "But you don't play anybody. You don't play anybody." Okay, well, here you go. All right. So
I figure you were able to schedule with Aledo, so it was just kind of serendipity that it ended up being the opener.
Yep.
Right, and then going back to finish up your thought on Bel Air.
Here's another interesting thing I'll tell everybody.
Yeah.
The Texas High School Coaches Association wrote Buchanan a letter asking him not to play us because they didn't want to lend credibility to the game. They thought it would give credibility if we were to go out there and beat a UIL team like that. It takes away the ability to say they don't play anybody. They told him we were going to even let him in the Hall of Fame for playing that game. But he kept to the game, which I give him a ton of credit. He stuck with the game.
Now, how could that possibly hurt Texas high school football?
Because they want to be able to say, but Parish doesn't play anybody. That keeps kids from wanting to go there and play.
Oh, so they're trying to keep people in there. So
they want to keep the mystique alive of UIL football, right? And so that was kind of what we set out to show was, hey, our kids are literally just as good as anybody, the best of the best that you have to offer.
Right.
Football is football. It doesn't matter what league you play in. And I would tell you, some of the TAPS teams I've been around the last 6 years are some of the best football teams I've seen. That Bishop Dunn team, my second year, was loaded with talent.
The 2018 state champions.
Absolutely. They could beat anybody I've seen in a long time. So it doesn't matter. And I think it also gave the kids a new challenge. To go out and have some of these teams on the schedule was a way to get their attention back and not always play the same old teams year in, year out. Gave them something else to focus on for the beginning of the season, and then now they're back focused on this.
Right. And then wrapping up our thoughts on Bel Air, you've got a quarterback there who is one of the best youth triple jumpers in the world.
Yeah.
And he comes back in that second half, and then obviously he's carried the Crusaders to an excellent season. Talk about that kind of talent that you have to combat from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, it was keeping him contained, which we did for most of the game. But again, it's hard. We were struggling. It was 14-0. I don't think we scored for a long time after that.
Right.
Went 17-0, and then we didn't score again until the last drive. So it starts to get frustrating. That's the thing that's really hard. As a coach, you try to balance as the head coach. You don't want your offense or your defense getting frustrated with the other. You want them, from my seat, to both play perfect games because you don't want, even going back to last week, the offense starts to be like, come on, guys, stop them, because we're having to score every time they score the first couple of drives. And, from where I sit, I want both of them to play well because that kind of keeps the harmony between the team. You don't want one side to far outpace the other side. Like Iowa has got going on in college football this year. Their defense is really good and their offense is terrible. So you're hopeful that doesn't happen, but that happened in that game where our offense, just for whatever reason, we were moving the ball. We just get in the red zone and could not finish the drives. And so it started to, you knew if you kept giving him opportunities sooner or later, that kid's talented enough that he's going to make a play, and then that's what happened. And then things got a little scary there for a minute, but, luckily we were able to answer with that last drive and score and go up 24-17, and defense then held them, and we held out the game. But, that game was a pivotal turning point for us as a coaching staff and kids and everybody else that, hey, we're not invincible just because we beat somebody that everybody says is good the week before. Right. They may not even be very good this year. They were 0-2 to start out the season, Aledo was. So that may not even be a good football team. You don't know. So we need to get back on our grind and get going here.
Yeah, they're still playing this week.
They are still playing this week.
So, and then now I kind of get more of an insight because one of the things that stuck out in my mind in this season is on the way back home, I just happened to pull into the Buc-ee's in Madisonville when the bus rolls in. And I saw you get off the bus, and I said, "Oh, great win, coach." And you're like, "Yeah," and I could tell that you were already watching the video on the way back. And I thought, okay, he's already moved on to Austin LBJ.
Yeah, no, I wasn't pleased with the performance. You always are pleased with a win, but you didn't that's not how we wanted to perform in that game.
Right. And then you do turn that around next week. You get a chance to go down to Austin, another big road trip. Second week in a row, you're on the bus for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you go down to Austin LBJ and avenge your only loss.
Yeah, that's
of
an
the
easy one because that's a
2021
revenge
campaign.
game. So that's
Right.
an easy game to
Talk
get
to
the
me
kids
about
up. It was our only loss the year before. We felt like we shouldn't have lost the game, and so that's an easy week to get everybody motivated because it's a revenge game. So everybody wants to get their pound of flesh back, which is exactly what happened.
Right, and Sawyer Anderson has a fantastic game down there in Austin. 4 touchdown passes.
Yeah, I think he had 5 in that one.
5, that's right. 5 touchdown passes, 272 yards.
Yeah.
Great game all around there against the Jaguars.
Yep.
Sending them down. Then you come back home for game 4 of the season, the big one.
The big one, yep.
I mean, you invite, if Parish, you talked about earlier how Parish is the smallest school population-wise in TAPS Division I. And if you look at it from a UIL perspective, and I think that we can because you played, 3 strong UIL.
4, right?
Four strong UIL football teams this year. If Parish was a UIL school, they'd be in 3A Division I. You'd be playing with Gunter and that group.
Yep.
So then you invite the defending 5A Division II state champions to your house, and I think they were just as excited to play Parish Episcopal as Parish was to play the South Oak Cliff Golden Bears.
Right.
Talk about that game a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one you'd like to have back, obviously. I mean, we felt like we let it slip away, turn the ball over. There's 2 things that happened in that game. Number one, I think when you walked out on the field, it looked like Alabama was out there playing against you. So our kids were a little intimidated until they realized, hey, we can play with this team. So the start wasn't great. We got down 14-0 before we even knew what happened.
Well, that's true. But, I mean, I got to give Galusha's team credit. I mean, he made that opening drive took 7.5 minutes for them to score.
Yeah.
They didn't just walk right into the end zone. So I thought, and that's where I first thought, okay, this is going to be a football game because Parish made the Golden Bears earn every yard in that first touchdown drive.
But I mean, Sawyer's first pass was intercepted. I mean, and things didn't go the way we wanted them to in the beginning of the game. And so we get down 14-0. And then all of a sudden we get the big play from Derek and Sawyer on that 39-yard touchdown pass. And then that's the point where our kids were like, we can play with this team just like anybody else. And then from the rest of that game, we pretty much dominated the game until the last drive. The shame of that whole deal is, it's uncharacteristic, again, knock on wood, for us to turn the ball over like that. We're up 28-14 going into the fourth quarter with the ball.
Yes.
Turn the ball over. They get it. And then, we're driving with the ball, turn the ball over. Everything that could have gone wrong felt like it went wrong in that game. And then, if I could have it back again, I would have called a timeout when they're sitting there on 4th down. We did not think they were going to kick the ball. Okay. I didn't think the kicker was going to. I thought
you stole my question.
I thought what he was going to do was he was going to wait, take a timeout, and take one shot at the end zone.
Right.
So I didn't want to give him multiple shots at the end zone with those receivers they had from where they were to throw up Hail Marys. So Galusha and I were sitting there talking about it. We didn't think they were going to kick it. We thought they were going to just let it go, take one shot at the end zone, and go to overtime. So we didn't want to use our timeout, leave them 30 seconds, and give them 2 or 3 shots at the end zone. So we just let it go. Next thing they know, we're like, they're trotting the kicker out. And we're like, I'll be damned, they're putting the kicker out there. And then he makes that dang kick, which I would have bet a lot of money on. He wouldn't, was it a 43-yard kick?
43-yarder at the buzzer.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I had it over to do again, absolutely would have taken the timeout, and made them do something. But I never dreamt that they had that much confidence in their kicker to do that.
Oh, no, that was by far his longest field goal of his career. I think the next longest field goal he had prior to that was a 37-yarder. So that was my question. I mean, 3 quarters of very good football, followed by, let's be honest, the worst quarter of football this team's played all season.
And a stupid coaching decision. So, I mean, everything could have gone wrong.
I'm not going to go there because I want you to stay in that chair. But, no, I mean, the turnovers aren't coaching decisions. You turn the team turns the ball over 4 times in the fourth quarter.
As a coach, you regret, that's the thing that kills you, when they try that kicker out there and then he makes it, you're like, oh, God, I should have, should have seen that coming. You don't. But, I watched him in warm-up.
That was my thought process is you thought he doesn't have the leg.
Well, and I watched him in pregame warm-up, and it didn't seem like he had a ton of consistency, and it certainly didn't seem like they had a ton of confidence in him, but you live and you learn.
Right.
know?
So let's talk about that. The lessons learned from the lone blemish on the campaign this season.
Yeah. I mean, obviously take a timeout.
No, not so much you, but I mean, what did the kids learn from that? Because obviously they had to be pretty disgusted with themselves turning the ball over 4 times in the fourth quarter. I mean, they were up by 14 and driving going into that game, so they had to not be happy with themselves. I mean, I know the coaching staff learned some things and the players learned some things. So how have you guys been able to use that negative and turn it into a positive into what is now a 7-game win streak going into the state semifinal?
Turnovers like cancer. You don't really want to talk about turnovers because they kind of become, they just kind of take on a life of their own. So I don't ever bring it up. It's just, we just hope we don't have those experiences again. Sometimes it just happens to you and it is what it is. But the thing I think they learned from that game is they can play with anybody. I think still, even though the Alito and LBJ, I think Sock was kind of a different animal for them. And I think when they showed well in that game, obviously they were disappointed they lost. Mm-hmm. Everybody was. But I also think there was a certain sense of confidence in them that here are all these 5-star and 4-star kids, and we had them, and we should have blown them out. It should have been 35-14 going into the fourth quarter, and we're every bit as good as any of these kids are just because we're at Parish. And they get a ton of publicity for being at SOC. We're every bit as good as this, and we're a darn good football team. I think that's more the lesson that came out of it than anything.
Right, and another, what I think is an interesting positive out of that game as well, learning what I have from the work I do for Dallas ISD is you garnered another big fan after that game, and that's Jason Todd, the head coach of the Golden Bears.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I like him a lot.
So we get to see a rematch at Kincaid Stadium next year.
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, now you take your lessons learned from the South Oak Cliff loss and put it together in what I think was the best game of the season so far, and that's the victory over China Spring. I mean, in my opinion, that a huge victory over a quality opponent. Looked like all the cylinders were firing. I mean, a couple of minor mistakes, but
here's
all in
the deal
all,
with
probably
that.
the most well-rounded game of the year.
Defensively, we played lights out. I would say offensively, it may have been one of our worst games, but we lost a ton of people in the SOC game. We lost 3 starting offensive linemen, which was a huge problem for us. We played Landry Sattler, who did a really good job, but he had to come over from defense and play the majority of that game as a brand new offensive lineman. So that game had a bunch of other interesting challenges from a coaching perspective. Now, we had the bye right after, so if we could get through just that game and come out of it, win, and come out of it healthy, we could get some guys back. But we were down Nick Ferris, and Aiden Gilmore in that game. We were down Chase Burton. Yep. So, I mean, we were down a bunch of guys on offense, which made that game tough for us offensively. May not appeared like it, but we never got in a rhythm after that first drive on offense. Now, a lot of that credit goes to them. They're a really good football team. But, our
there's
defense,
a reason they'd won 20 games in a row prior to that matchup with you.
Correct. And our defense kept us in that game, the majority of that game, and made the plays when they had to. And then obviously pull it out with Sed's run in the end was a huge play that sealed the game for us.
Right. And then after sending China Spring home, ending their 20-game win streak, it sounds to me from what you're saying the bye week could not have come at a better time.
Could not have come at a better time.
Now, was the bye week purposely scheduled halfway through the season, or did that just work out serendipity again?
Yeah. Just worked out.
Talk about how that bye week helps you guys get ready for the
We
district
told everybody
schedule.
to go away, and we'll see you guys again on Monday.
So that was all. Get out of here for a whole week.
A whole week. We didn't do anything.
And most of the injuries were resolved by the game.
Who did we play that next week? Bishop Lynch.
Bishop Lynch.
We got Nate and Nick back. We didn't get Aiden back. Was Chase back for Lynch?
Chase wasn't quite.
No, Chase was on his way back for Nolan, I think, was Chase's first game back. So we played Lynch and Cornerstone without Aiden and Chase, and then they all came back for Nolan.
Right. And then
Chase came back. Aiden didn't come back till Prestonwood.
Right. So you go through the bye week, you get healthier. Doesn't sound like back to 100%, but you do get some players back.
Right.
And then you roll into the district schedule against Bishop Lynch.
Yep.
The first time around, completely dominant game. I mean, your team is up 16-0 2 minutes into the ball game.
Yeah.
So talk about how that had to feel, and the first opportunity this season that we get to see the second unit come in and get some meaningful reps in a varsity game.
Yeah, well, it felt different because we played so many barn burners that all of a sudden to kind of pinching yourself asking, is this really happening that we're up, because we hadn't had a blowout game like that. And then, to your point, obviously it was good to get some of the guys that have been working hard in practice and hadn't had any opportunity, chance to play some varsity games, because that's tough to go 5 games standing on the sideline. So, I mean, again, as a coach, you feel for those kids because you know they're out there working just as hard as everybody else. They want to play. You want them to play. It's not like I get any enjoyment out of somebody not playing in a football game. So it's great for everybody to get involved and have a role in that and do something and get out there and get to play.
Right, and a convincing 44-0 victory.
Yeah.
Coach Galusha and the defense pitch a shutout in that game.
Yep.
And that carries you into your final road trip of the year to fill the hole left by John Paul II when you take the road trip down to San Antonio for Cornerstone Christian. And talking about some of those young men that didn't get a chance to play a whole lot in the first 5 games, calling that game with Forrest Baldwin, we were just stunned, could not have been more thrilled for what we saw as a breakout game for possibly your next rising star, DC Crane.
Yeah. He's really
against
good.
Cornerstone
Yes.
Christian. So talk a little bit about the victory over Cornerstone Christian and what DC Crane has been able to do with his opportunities he's been given this season.
Yeah, well, the victory over Cornerstone, they were missing their quarterback, and we felt real good about our game plan going into it. It kind of went the way we thought. But, yeah, he was the breakout star of that game. And, you can see he's really explosive. He's really fast. You go watch him in the weight room. He's one of the stronger kids, pound for pound. He's got everything you want in a football player. He's got the ability to be a Power 5, DB, whatever he wants to play. He played running back, he played safety. But, you really saw him come to life in that game with his 12 tackles or whatever it was. And, the
12
potential
tackles,
is there.
an interception, a fumble recovery.
Yeah.
An amazing game for Crane.
Yep.
And that gets you back home for the homecoming game with Nolan Catholic. They come out. That's kind of the first game. It reminded me a lot, this Bishop Lynch game last week, of the Nolan game. Nolan's offense comes out, and for the first 7 to 8 minutes, it's pretty strong. Kevin Arduino, the offensive coordinator, looks like he's had a pretty good game plan. Seems like the defense wasn't really ready. Now,
again, what you try to tell the kids, and that's why I keep harping on them, like, everyone's going to come with their bet. You got to be ready. And, I don't know if they all the way understand what they're up against every week, that everybody – this is their shot to take down Parish, and they're going to take their shot.
Right.
And you got to take that away from them. And what you're talking about there is exactly what happened.
Right, because Arduino had a good game plan for you guys. Mm-hmm. And then, it's toe-to-toe for about the first half of the first quarter.
Yeah.
And then your superior talent dominates in that game. And also the distractions in homecoming week, I'm sure that you can address. But talk a little bit about that victory where you get a little bit of a challenge in district play and how the kids, like you were talking about, the kids overcome that and go on to win by 4 touchdowns.
Obviously with homecoming, they got the dress weeks and all that stuff, whatever they do. It's all the different days. And so you're fighting to keep their attention. They've seen the scores of who Nolan's played before, so they don't think it's going to be, you're trying to tell them as a coach, hey, come on. These guys have good players.
That offense had put up a lot of points, even in losses.
Points, and I think they realized after that first drive, we got a bad penalty on a running into the kicker or something like that. I think they realized, oh, crap, we better show up to play here. And it's never a good feeling as a coach. You try as best you can to tell them, hey, we got to go from the jump, but that doesn't always happen. And, one of the things you want to see, when you got a good racehorse, Secretariat, whoever used to own Secretariat always talk about, they would try different things every week. They would use one of the horses to get way out in front and try to get Secretariat to run too fast too early. Then they try this. So people are going to try a lot of stuff against you. What you want to see in your horse is the ability to adapt and overcome anything they do to you, which is what happened there. And that's, always a good feeling as a coach that even though you didn't start out great, we were able to come from behind there and kind of, do what we do and ultimately overtake the game and overpower them. And wouldn't like it to be that way. I'd much prefer the week before, but it was what it was.
Or the following week, and we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. But no, that's what I've noticed being in the booth for these games this season is, as you say, the opposing team is going to come out, they're going to take their best shot.
Yeah.
But the way your coaching staff, and specifically Will Galusha, you talk about having him almost as a second head coach on the field, the way that he and his coaching staff are able to adapt, overcome, put in the necessary changes to, before halftime or at least by the second half, completely eliminate what the opponent was trying to accomplish.
And we're like a yin and yang. He's ultimately confident. I'm the exact opposite. I'm worried about everything. So it's a good balance. He doesn't think anything could ever go wrong. Every week we're going to stop him. We're going to hold him to 0. And then you got me on the opposite end that's worried about everything. So it kind of balances itself out. to make a rational human being.
Well, there you go. And so, a little bit of a challenge early by Nolan, but you guys take care of business, get the clock running, get the second team more work. I mean, the second team has seen work every week since the Bishop Lynch game.
Hopefully that continues.
Indeed. So we go to the week with Trinity Christian. Mm-hmm. And really, I think your main opponent that week was the weather. So you end up playing on a Saturday morning. But what I saw from that game, I wasn't able to be at that game, but I did watch a good, quick, clean game.
Yeah.
Get out of it injury-free, get the job done. Those young men on the field did the work.
Yeah.
They took care of business.
Yeah. That was one of the games we played. I think the game got moved to Saturday. We wanted to play Thursday night. Again, you see all these different things for people, the games that we called early in the week, wanted to move the game to Thursday. They didn't want to do it because I'm sure they thought playing in the rain gives them some type of advantage. It doesn't. Both teams have to play in the rain. So you're doing, it's not like you're playing in the rain. So, I don't know why people think that gives them some kind of advantage. So then they ultimately determined Friday that they wanted to move the game. So they called us about noon and moved the game Friday to Saturday, which I think got our kids irritated. And so that's why you saw what you saw there that Saturday at the game. But, it was a clean, really, defense played really well, offense played really well. Yeah.
Right. And then the weather delay moving that game to Saturday affected the following week because we had bad weather again.
Yes.
You wanted to play that game on Thursday, and Tapp said, "Oh no."
Well, Taps didn't say anything.
Oh, luckily,
I'll tell you that story.
Yeah,
luckily,
please.
The old district president, Jeff Smith, called me that Thursday and said, Dan, have you checked with Taps to see if you're able to play the game Thursday night? I said, no, why? He said, well, I was at lunch with the TCA coaches, and he said, they're just waiting on you to play the game, and then they're going to turn you in and get you guys to forfeit and get you out of the playoffs. So I called down to Taps. I was the one, people don't realize, I was the one that ratted us out myself because I had to get the approval from Taps, which they ultimately said no. And so we ended up playing the game, but moving the game back to Friday from Thursday because of some rule they have that's not clearly defined, in my opinion. But
about a minimum 5 days.
5 days, but
right.
Is it 5 24-hour periods? Is it 5 days? What it's not defined. So that's where the confusion came in. It was 5 24-hour periods, Saturday from 11 to Thursday at 7. They're saying it's not 5 24-hour or not 5 full days. So we had to move it back to Friday. So that's how that happened.
Right. And then Friday ends up being the bad weather moves out by the mid-afternoon. So it just ends up being cold and wet.
And windy.
So, not the kind of game where Sawyer Anderson is going to be featured.
Right.
But boy, did Maddox Reed show up and just take over.
Yes, he did.
Talk about that. But that had to be a highlight of the season so far. Yeah, it reminded me of
Andrew Paul. That's what it felt like, with Andrew Paul every week.
289 yards, 5 touchdowns. Talk about that for me.
A weird stat about that game, we only ran 12 offensive plays in the second half.
Yep.
He ran, I think most of his big runs came in the second half, but you could see.
Well, 3 of the touchdowns, 37, 65, and 41 yards.
In the second half?
Yeah.
You could see I knew or I felt like I told you earlier, I can only see a limited amount of things from the field. But one of the things I did notice was he was close in the first half. There was one where he slipped, where if he would have kept his feet, he was gone. There was a couple other ones where he just kind of missed, you saw him. So I felt like if we kept giving him the ball, that sooner or later he was going to figure it out, which was what ultimately happened.
Right.
But you could see he was really close in the first half to a couple of those runs, from being 10-yard runs to being home runs or being 3-yard runs if he didn't slip to being out the gate. So we just kind of stuck with it, and it ended up working out.
Right, and that's also the first game where you get your entire starting offensive line back healthy.
Yes.
And without those 5 guys up front, Maddox Reed doesn't gain 289.
Gilmore is a huge help to that.
Absolutely.
That's a big part of it. And then that's also the first game where our defense struggled a little bit, and that was a good thing to see that when that happened, our offense was able to kind of pick up the slack and flip the script a little bit and play complementary football there.
Right, and talk about that for a minute because A.J. Sibley tested that defense. I mean, that is a season high against Coach Galusha's defense, 169 yards. So talk about, how Coach Galusha takes that and turns it into a positive, getting a good test from a solid running back.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. I mean, he's really hard. Obviously, he does it every week, so he's hard to tackle. But I think, having that happen kind of woke up our defense a little bit that, you got to show up every week prepared and ready to play. And, they played dominant football pretty much up until that point. So, it helped them realize they got to be there just like, every week. It's not, you can't just roll out the football. That's what you worry about every week, is that they think you're just going to roll out the football and it's just going to automatically, magically happen. And it doesn't. It takes a ton of hard work. It takes a ton of preparation, and it takes a ton of luck to be where we are.
Oh, absolutely. There's a reason you actually play the game instead of hand out the trophy in August.
Yes, that's right.
So that gives you the district championship. You earn a first-round bye, and that's the week that Bishop Lynch has their first-round game against San Antonio Central Catholic. Yeah. And then following the week off on the playoff bye, then we have Bishop Lynch last Saturday at Globe Life Field.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the playoff bye for a second. Do you see that? I mean, obviously it's great to get a week off, but do you see that as a hindrance or a help where the other team has to play that week? Is there a rust factor there, or do you guys?
You could argue either way.
Right.
I don't think there's any advantage either way. You could argue they can get on a roll because they win, and you could argue you're rusty, or you could argue you get healthy while they got to go out and get banged up. So I don't know. I don't think that's the age-old question. I don't think anybody knows the answer.
Right. Which came first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
So we come into Globe Life Field last Saturday night, and Lynch is ready to play.
Yes, they are.
I mean, you see a different Legend Howell than you saw 6 weeks earlier, where he gets pulled from that game, and Cooper Alford has to come in and mop up.
Right.
A completely different Legend Howell, a completely different passing attack. And for the first 8 minutes, it's toe-to-toe. Mm-hmm. Then they go up 14-7 with, I believe, a little over 7 minutes to play in the first quarter.
Yep.
And then you got the Sawyer Anderson and crew, they answer another great. I mean, he had 5 touchdown passes against them in the first game.
That was his best game, yeah.
And then 5 touchdown passes last Saturday. Mm-hmm. So once Coach Galusha and the defense get that first stop, they force that punt when it's 14-14, and you guys take over. And from there, it's another 28 unanswered points in the ball game. Talk about the coaching adjustments and how the team was feeling in that first 8 minutes. You touched on it earlier in our interview here about the back and forth.
Yeah.
So,
nobody likes that. I mean,
right.
That's a lot of pressure to play under, where you have to score on every drive because they're going to score on every drive. But again, you like to see the way they answered. The first drive we got a penalty. It's 1st and 20, and Sawyer rips a comeback or whatever. I can't remember what we threw, but he throws to Bryson over there on the left side and gets all the yards back. He takes us right down the field and scores. Then they score, and he takes us right down the field and scores again. That's what you want to see as a coach, because that can be nerve-wracking, and you can start to feel that pressure build, and you want to see your kids answer, which they did, and you'd like to think if that kept happening, keep answering, we were going to keep going until we got the job done. Obviously, our defense settled in and figured it out. We didn't need to do that. But, the good thing that came out of that game is that was Sawyer's. I mean, he's playing with a ton of confidence right now, I think. Him and those receivers now, that was the best they've looked to me all season. So, hopefully that continues to go on. And then, again, I think it was a little surprising, but they came out in a different formation than we had seen. So we were a little bit misaligned on the first drive. And then the second score, it was a 1-play or 2-play drive.
2-play, 77-yard bomb.
Yeah, and you obviously don't want that to happen, but it's going to happen at some points during the season.
I think that was the longest play you guys have given up from scrimmage all season.
I think the good thing that happened there is we ended up shutting them down. And, this is all in theory because we're about to go test it out next week. But, hopefully we show up with a renewed vigor to go out and, you want every game to go the way that first Bishop Lynch game did, where you're up 16-0 2 minutes in. That's not realistic, though.
Right.
So what you can't do is panic when that doesn't happen. And, what's wrong? What's going on? And that's kind of what you guard against.
Especially only 7 minutes or 5 minutes into the ball game. And
in a game like that, you got to guard against that because everybody is telling your kids, they're reading it, that you're going to kill them. So then all of a sudden, it's 14-14 or 14-7 with 7 minutes to go, and they're like, uh-oh, what's going on? That's not what you want. You just want to be like, it's okay. We got to just keep playing. We're going to be fine. We'll be fine. And I use a Floyd Mayweather analogy. If you ever watch him box, he's won all his fights. He wins them all in different ways. He's not Mike Tyson. He does not go out there and knock everybody out in the first round. There's times he'll lose the first 4 rounds and win the last 8. So you got to do whatever it is you got to do to get the job done, but you can't panic like Mike Tyson and start flailing wildly if you hadn't knocked the guy out in the first round because that's what you expected to do. Right. Recalibrate, adjust. I'll box him and let's go. We got 12 rounds.
And that's exactly what Coach Galusha did because after you guys answer and make it 14-14 late in the first quarter, then the next 3 offensive possessions for Lynch are
nothing.
Punt, turnover on downs, turnover.
Yeah.
and then it's 35-14 at halftime.
Yeah.
Now, coming out at the beginning of the third quarter, I guess they thought they might catch you off guard.
Yeah.
Now, that kick team you had in, did you guys sense that? Is that
Yes.
a hands team that was in there?
Yeah, so all the other coaches joke with me because I always tell everybody on every kickoff they're going to onside kick it. So I finally got one right. But, yeah, we came out with a kind of a hybrid hands team deal and put them out there. And, Bryson was over there and obviously saw what happened there.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about Bryson Fields.
Yeah, he had a breakout game.
Not only his receiving game, but then taking that opening kick of the third quarter, 51 yards to the house.
Well, that was a huge play because, it kind of took all the momentum away from them. And it was a really savvy play. That's hard to do, also to catch that ball on the run. Most people just fall to the ground and run it all the way in.
So he saw an opening.
And broke their will. But then also he had a really good game. He had a breakout game. I think he had 95 yards catching and 2 touchdowns or a touchdown.
96 and 2, yeah.
So, that was a really good game for Bryson. He's a sophomore. There's another kid, along with D.C. Crane, that, has an unbelievable ceiling,
Indeed.
A high ceiling that he's going to be a big-time football player.
Right. So then that brings us in to the semifinal. We've already talked quite a bit extensively about Houston, St. Thomas, and how you guys are going to address that. So just kind of as we'll wrap up here, what you're looking for from your team Saturday afternoon in Belton.
You just want them to play well. The thing you really, as a coach, you worry about is, the last thing you want is them to go out there. We've had such a good run to go out there and have this be the game where everything falls apart. To me, that's what motivates me every week is I feel like that could happen at any moment, and so we've had such an incredible run that hopefully this isn't the week where the wheels come off. And so you do everything you can preparation-wise, practice as much as you can, watch as much film as you can to prevent that from happening, and that's kind of the driver. And I think, look, 2 10-1 football teams, obviously everybody knows that's going to be a good football game. I obviously think we'll come out on top. I want us to come out on top, but I also want us to play well. I want the kids to play well. I want everybody to come out injury-free, and then whatever happens, happens.
Right. So then the plan there is just to have more of a workmanlike type game that you did against TCA and punch that ticket for next Friday night in Waco.
Yep, that's right.
Well, Coach, I wish you all the luck.
Appreciate it.
And it's been a blast being up in the booth calling these games this season, and I hope we get to do 2 more.
I do too. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
The head coach of the Parish Episcopal Panthers. And folks, good evening and welcome to the Parish Panther pregame show. Brian Shackelford here alongside Jim Dixon and Forrest Baldwin. And here for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to get you lots of information, everything you need to know leading up to tonight's TAPS Division I state championship game between the Prestonwood Christian Lions and your Parish Panthers. And folks, we want to welcome Forrest. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us. And this is Parish's 6th appearance in the state championship game, and you've been here for every one of them. How's this one feel for you tonight?
Boy, I was thinking about that on the drive down today because about 30 minutes outside of Dallas is when it really starts to hit you. And I don't have a kid playing. I'm working with you guys, which is a blast. But I've started thinking about down to 2010 and the drive down to Temple for the first state championship game. And those kind of butterflies and thoughts and anticipation and excitement all came flooding back.
And, Jim, this will be our first call in a CHAPS Division I state final of this championship game here tonight. The winner takes the spoils. And things that you're looking to see here in tonight's game as we get started with our pregame show.
Well, what I really want to see is Forrest's arm, because his arm's going to be huge if he holds the mic and the fishing lure the entire game.
Oh, the big, yep.
Yes.
He's got the latest championship ring right there styling.
Because that's what it's all about right there. So, no, I think I'm looking for a very evenly matched game, and I mean, the composition on both sides of the ball is going to be really interesting, the way these guys are going to play off of each other, and who exhibits dominance first, and who's going to draw blood, and that's going to really tell the tale.
And speaking of drawing blood in this championship game, both teams have done that very effectively here in the postseason in 2022. As we look at last week's scores, Prestonwood with a very emphatic victory, 56-21 over Nolan Catholic. And, Jim, this was a game that was all about A.J. Sibley. 327 yards on the ground for the Prestonwood senior, and the Prestonwood offense takes total control and dominates Nolan Catholic.
Yeah, the last time I checked, you can't score if you don't have the ball. And if A.J. Sibley's got the ball, you pretty much have the luxury of saying, I'm going in this hole on this and stop me.
Right, and Forrest, in that game, Nolan Catholic is able to put 21 points on the board against Prestonwood. They did show some things early. We're starting to see some very sharp play from the Nolan offensive unit led by their offensive coordinator, Kevin Arduino, and they may be a force to be reckoned with in 2023 as they fall short here in the semifinal this year.
You know, I agree with you on that, Brian, seeing the way that Nolan Catholic team has developed throughout district play, where I believe they were the 4 seed coming into the tourney.
They were.
And to go into the state semifinal game and sort of, catch lightning in the bottle at the end of the season going to the playoffs. Hats off to them and for giving, I believe, Prestonwood probably everything they wanted in that game.
Absolutely, with 21 points scored, the most points that have been scored against Prestonwood since their preseason schedule. Now, Parish, on the other hand, also very convincing wins in the playoffs. Jim, we had both of those games, and the first one at Globe Life Field, a convincing start-to-finish tour de force for the Panthers, beating Bishop Lynch by a score of 56-14.
Yeah, Bishop Lynch, again, I kind of judge in the playoffs what they did in the last. You don't look at the season as an aggregate. You look at the composition of the last couple of games. And Bishop Lynch came in and kind of showed their mettle in the first quarter. And, after that it was Parish. And Parish just had to really kind of settle their feet and get their game plan going. And once they got going, it was ball rolling downhill.
Yeah, and the key there, and I think what really turned the lights out for Bishop Lynch, Forrest, was coming back from halftime. Yeah. The Lynch crew thought that they were going to pull one over on Parish. They tried the onside kick down 35-14 at halftime, and that hops right into the hands of Bryson Fields, who takes it 51 yards to the house, and they open up a 42-14 lead and never look back.
No, and that's the thing that we've talked about over the course of the season is you really don't want to give Parish any advantage at all, any kind of turnover, anything, because Parish will convert that into points on you, and it's very easy for that game to get out of hand if you start doing that.
And following the victory against Bishop Lynch, then the Panthers traveled down to Belton to face off against the Houston St. Thomas Eagles. And the Eagles had played in that same stadium, Jim, the week before when they defeated Trinity Christian Addison 27-21 in overtime. But the familiarity with Tiger Field and Belton didn't seem to help the Eagles last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, just because you're a frequent stayer at Holiday Inn doesn't give you a home field advantage, and Parish took advantage of that. I mean, they just executed their game plan and worked it flawlessly, and we got into a running clock well into the second half.
And another great day passing for Sawyer Anderson, as he throws 3 touchdown passes, a breakout game for Hutch Crow. Yeah. And the Panthers punched their ticket to tonight's game here in Waco.
Right, exactly. I think he had 2 incomplete passes, Sawyer did, that entire game. And then Hutch Crow, who had been maybe a little bit silent over the last game or two, 2 big catches for touchdowns in the second quarter, including that big one he went up for in the end zone that we interviewed him about, and the way he kept possession of that ball. So great win for the Panthers, and importantly enough, you come out without any injuries.
Indeed.
Again, which is huge in the playoffs, as you guys know, in making a run to the championship game.
And that sets the table here for tonight's championship game, folks. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back to discuss the offense and defense for both teams as they set up here tonight for the Division I championship game at Waco ISD Stadium. We'll be back on Game on Sports right after this.
If you're looking to protect your auto, home, or business, then call Ann Anderson Farmers Insurance in Frisco. We are local, family, and veteran-owned, so you can trust us in helping you protect the things that are most important to you. We pride ourselves in offering personal customer service and competitive pricing. Whether you are protecting yourself or your business, we can customize a plan that is perfect for your needs. You've worked hard for the things you own. Let us work hard to protect them. Give Ann Anderson Farmers Insurance a call today.
Nutritious, delicious, and fast. That's Chop Stop, a place for satisfying chopped salads, warm Chopperito bowls, and wraps. A fresh and healthy option that's definitely more than a salad. You can design your own chop from over 40 fresh toppings, or select one of our signature salads, like the Cobb Chop, Greek Chop, and more. You can even get all of our menu items catered. Chop Stop, more than just a salad. Stop in, call, or visit us online at chopstop.com to order.
Getting on a strong financial foundation can be complex. Having a financial professional by your side is key. Sangeeta Datta is a financial strategist who specializes in need analysis for life insurance, employee benefits, retirement planning, and much more. Her award-winning financial guidance will provide the best options for you and your family. And when the time comes, she'll be there when you need it most. Datta Insurance Services is here to protect your family's wealth, lifestyle, and dreams for the future. Call or visit us today.
Love where you come from, root where you are. Wear the badge of Texas pride. And take a bit of Texas everywhere you go. Texas apparel with Texas attitude. Get 10% off when you shop with us today on your first order. The biggest and the best are only from the Lone Star State. Love where you come from, root where you are.
Hello everyone, this is John Thompson with NTX PDR, Paintless Dent Repair, located in Denton, Texas. Have you ever been affected with a door ding or hail damage? We offer mobile services to everyone in the DFW area. We can come out to you at your location, at your job, at your work, and we can fix those dents on site. So you can give us a call at 972-922-1060. So if you have a ding, give us a ring.
Division I Championship pregame show. Brian Shackelford, Jim Dixon, Forrest Baldwin here with you. And, gentlemen, let's take a few minutes here and talk about both of these teams from an offensive and defensive standpoint. When we look at the Parish offense against Prestonwood defense, first of all, for the Parish offense, obviously the star there, Sawyer Anderson, over 2,800 yards passing. He is on tap tonight with a game that I would expect he would have here in nominal conditions, 70 degrees, to eclipse 3,000 yards for the season. And, Jim, talk about that with the passing attack behind Sawyer Anderson, 35 touchdowns on the year, something the Prestonwood defense will definitely have to keep an eye on tonight.
Yeah, Prestonwood has to account for a number of tools. And you know, I realize you're saying Sawyer Anderson is kind of the linchpin or the axis of that, but I mean, there's just so much depth and so many tools that Coach Novikov has to go to that you can't just key on one thing, and that's what Prestonwood, you know, they have to have their head on a swivel and know, you know, yeah, it didn't come my way this last time, but it's coming my way next time.
And a brilliant receiving core as Anderson spreads the ball around for us. Not only does he have to worry about multiple threats in Chase Burton, Derek Eusebio, Bryson Fields, Hutch Crow, but then Cedric Mays out of the backfield. But then you also have the running back tandem of Maddox Reed and Cedric Mays. And we have to take a moment and talk about the game 4 weeks ago tonight when Maddox Reed had that breakout game for 289 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Lions.
And in a game that I think at the start when you and I were talking about it, I said, this demands a running game. If you remember on that Friday night, it was about 4 weeks ago, wind blowing out of the north. We had that front come through at 30 miles an hour, sometimes gusting to 40 or 50, temperature dropping, and we felt like it was going to be a challenge to complete a pass on occasion. And we saw that with the passing game just was very minimal. And all of a sudden, Maddox Reed in that second half put the game on his shoulders and said, let's get this done, which is great. You know, Maddox Reed, I think what people forget, maybe he's not a 1,000-yard rusher right now.
But he may eclipse that tonight.
Keep in mind that he missed the first 2 games of the season.
With injury.
So that kid in a regular season is probably up to 1,300 yards maybe?
Quite possibly.
For rushing.
He's at 889 right now, so with a good 100-yard-plus game tonight, he will eclipse 1,000 yards for the season.
And so all of a sudden he's in that conversation of one of the more elite backs in the district. If it wasn't for those 2 games, I think he would be there.
Indeed. Now, looking at this from the Prestonwood side, their defense having to make the stop, you have to look at their 2 leading tacklers, Hudson Lunsford and Luke McGarry, because they lead the team 1-2 in tackles. They both play linebacker. So from a running back standpoint, Forrest, we'll stick with you on this. How is that offensive line going to have to look out for number 48 and for Hudson Lunsford coming, when they take that block to the second level.
Right, yeah. So when we look back at the film, and of course things can change the second time you play a team, right? They make some adjustments. Prestonwood was running that 3-4 defense, and still at that point, on occasion, they were getting penetration back into the backfield of Parish and kind of blowing those plays up. To me, if they're going that 3-4, it's making sure from an offensive line standpoint that each lineman knows their assignments in that. The other thing that I really liked in the first Prestonwood game, where we got positive yardage big, was we started putting Mays in the backfield as a blocking back and sending him into the hole, and then pulling a guard around, a guard around, and just creating more blockers at that point of attack. That's when the game really started breaking open. So I would look for Parish to do more of that this trip.
Quite possibly so, but also better weather conditions tonight, Jim. So the passing game may be featured more tonight for Parish. And with Sawyer Anderson throwing, and the offensive line is going to have to give him time because he's going to be moving the ball around and having to deal with two very good cornerbacks in Trent Wheeler and the Arizona commit for the Lions, Carter Stoutmeyer.
Yeah, and we saw this in the last 2 or 3 games where, defenses against Parish were stacking the box, and that opened up opportunity on the quick slants. So that immediately pushes your passing game to the forefront of what you're going to do, and that's what's nice about Parish. Great, knock that table leg off and take away my running game. I'll beat you with the pass. You want me to run balanced? I'll run balanced. You want me to run rush at you?
Which is what they did 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'll pull my guards and away we go.
Now, and if you remember back in that Prestonwood game, Parish had a lot of success running twins to one side or the other, taking that outside receiver, running him down the field, having that slot receiver just go 8 or 9 yards and do an out. And Prestonwood was playing them 10 yards back, and Preston started picking them off. Them off. If you run man against, that's the thing, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to load the box up and try and stop the run, you're running man defense on the outside. And with these Parish receivers, bad idea, Coach.
No, indeed. And if you're going to run corner zero against a full spread offense, we saw it in the Prestonwood game. Even in the bad weather, those 7 and 8 yard quick slants, the skinny posts were open all game long.
Exactly.
Now we flip this to the other side and we look at the Prestonwood offense, and you can see by the 2,200 plus yards that he's gained this season that the workhorse for the Prestonwood offense is their senior running back, A.J. Sibley.
No surprise there.
Right.
No surprise there. You look at the stat sheet. He's getting the ball. They're running the ball 3 out of every 4 offensive plays that they run. And I would imagine 90% of the time he's getting the ball those 3 times. And you just got to figure out a way to stop him. Now, what helped with Parish last time in the game, they started running a 3-4. They would even begin to put 8 guys in the box, maybe 9 on occasion, depending on what the receiver set was. And the defensive line started getting penetration, filling up the holes. That led your linebacking core to be able to follow, pursue, and get up in those holes and start making tackles. You got to use at least 2 guys to tackle Sibley. The kid runs and he keeps his feet moving. It's gang tackling is what you've got to do to him.
And gang tackling below the waist, effective tackling, he'll just bounce right off on the shoulder pads.
The kid's a great runner.
Right. Now, looking at their offense, their passing game, obviously with the workhorse that Sibley is, Jim, they're going to use the run to set up the pass. And that's where McGuire Martin, the quarterback for the Lions, comes in. And the young man that is the second leading tackler on defense, Luke McGarry, is also their star tight end. And McGuire looks for him quite a bit when they do go to the passing game.
Yeah, and I mean they're just looking for short dissemination. They're trying to push the ball upfield. They want to beat you with the run. And I mean, to everybody's point thus far, I mean, it comes down to what the line play is, and we've talked about it ad nauseum. What's the conditioning? And that's where it's going to pay off. Conditioning on both sides of the ball, and that's it's nothing fantastic. It's blocking and tackling.
Right. And speaking of blocking and tackling, as we take this and look at the Parish defense, then is Sibley running the ball for us? Is this just open season and a field day for the 2 leading tacklers in TAPS Division I, Seth Scott and Cooper Malin?
Boy, you got to have big games from those guys today. You absolutely do. Again, it's no surprise. I think Will Galusha has got it dialed in. He's looked at the game film. Nothing, I think, is going to change. It's one of those things with Prestonwood that you dance with the one that brought you, as we used to say, and that's A.J. Sibley. If Parish, I think the advantage Parish has is if they can, Jim, stop him on first down and create some second and long situations, create some third and long situations, Jim, is now you're looking at a rather inexperienced passing program, even though we're in the state championship game. But inexperienced, what I mean by is not having that many pass attempts in a game. So I think that's going to be key, is to put them into second and third and long if you can.
And putting them in those second and third and long situations, Jim, then that's when you bring in the very talented defensive ends for the Parish defense, Caleb Irving and the Stanford commit Trey Williams. How do they key first to, I'm assuming they run first and then look at the pass, but then if it's second and long, third and long, then they can just pin their ears back and go.
And that's true. And you also see, we saw this periodically in the beginning of the season, where you had guys coming off the corner on corner blitzes and it worked quite effectively. And so with forcing Prestonwood to go to the pass, you got athletes aplenty back in the secondary with Parish, and they could definitely choke them off pretty quick and force them to die by the run.
Indeed, and if McGuire Martin, the quarterback, actually can get that pass off, eluding Trey Williams and or Caleb Irving, then he has to deal with the star safety for Parish, Ole Miss commit Daniel Demery.
Yeah. And one of the things we noticed in the Prestonwood game is the safety play on the defense during that game, where it became key for Daniel Demery and the other safeties to come up and fill those holes, especially on the sweeps that they were running.
Right, the
whether
stretch plays and
whether
sweeps.
it was Martindale running that quarterback sweep to the right, or it was the handoff to Sibley on a sweep, is getting those safeties to come up and fill holes.
And it's going to make for a very interesting matchup here. A lot of chess going on this evening, Jim. Forrest had mentioned it earlier. I don't think that these teams are really going to try to reinvent the wheel tonight. They're going to rely on their strengths, but where do you see the advantages on both sides of the ball coming out on top?
I like Parish's, the mix that Parish can throw at you, and the fact that they just have athletes aplenty on defense. And we've said it all. We said it from the beginning of the season. The tail of the tape is the first 5 games of the season, and as you said, question asked and answered, and this is something that Parish has prepared for. They prepared to be in this situation tonight, and Prestonwood is fortunate to be here, and I know they appreciate the opportunity, but I don't know that they have necessarily prepared themselves to be here, and I think depth is going to win out for Parish.
And speaking of being here, folks, we're going to come back right after this short break and talk to 2 young men who have been in this exact same spot. We're going to bring back 2 past state championship players for the Parish Panthers as we talk to Joe Meharry and Elliot DeSalams, and they can give us some insight into what's going through the players' minds here this evening as we continue in the TAPS Division I Football Championship pregame show right here on Game On Sports. Back in a moment.
If you're looking to protect your auto, home, or business, then call Ann Anderson Farmers Insurance in Frisco. We are local, family, and veteran owned, so you can trust us in helping you protect the things that are most important to you. We pride ourselves in offering personal customer service and competitive pricing. Whether you are protecting yourself or your business, we can customize a plan that is perfect for your needs. You've worked hard for the things you own. Let us work hard to protect them. Give Ann Anderson Farmers Insurance a call today.
Nutritious, delicious, and fast. That's Chop Stop, a place for satisfying chopped salads, warm Chopperito bowls, and wraps. A fresh and healthy option that's definitely more than a salad. You can design your own chop from over 40 fresh toppings, or select one of our signature salads, like the Cobb Chop, Greek Chop, and more. You can even get all of our menu items catered. Chop Stop, more than just a salad. Stop in, call, or visit us online at chopstop.com to order.
Getting on a strong financial foundation can be complex. Having a financial professional by your side is key. Sangeeta Datta is a financial strategist who specializes in need analysis for life insurance, employee benefits, retirement planning, and much more. Her award-winning financial guidance will provide the best options for you and your family. And when the time comes, she'll be there when you need it most. Datta Insurance Services is here to protect your family's wealth, lifestyle, and dreams for the future. Call or visit us today.
Love where you come from, root where you are. Wear the badge of Texas pride. And take a bit of Texas everywhere you go. Texas apparel with Texas attitude. Get 10% off when you shop with us today on your first order. The biggest and the best are only from the Lone Star State. Love where you come from, root where you are.
Hello, everyone.
And folks, we're back here on the TAPS Division I Championship Game pregame show, and we're here today with Joe Meharry and Elliot DeSalms, former Parish football players. Joe Meharry was a member of the championship game teams in 2019 and 2020. Elliot DeSalms, he was on the championship teams in 19, 20, and 21. And guys, thanks for being here with us. Joe, talk for a minute about what these guys are going through right here and what's going on in their mind tonight as they get ready for this game.
I can tell you it's laser focus. The whole week these guys have been absolutely zoned in on the game. There's always a lot of talk with the state championship games and things that are going on, but all these guys care about is the play, how they play each other, and obviously the outcome.
Right, and being on the first two state championship games, you were a freshman the year that Dan Novikov came in and became the head coach. And we've talked to him on multiple occasions. He talked about, Joe, about how with you young guys as freshmen and sophomores, he was selling a dream. Now, talk about what it was about Coach Novikov and his staff that made you want to stay at Parish, because you had no idea what would come a couple of years later. But talk about those freshman and sophomore seasons and what made you decide that I want to play for Coach Novikov and see where this goes.
Well, we had a really good group of seniors my sophomore year. And obviously, each year we saw improvement in the winning column, and that was encouraging. However, as we went through it, we all bought in with each other, and we could tell the coaches really cared about us and wanted us to win and put everything into the game, even in the off season and such. And working with Coach Malin, our strength and conditioning coach, we were in there every day, grinding it out, trying to get better, and I think everyone bought in, and that's what kept us all on board. And with those two championship rings you've gone on now, you're playing football at Trinity University in San Antonio. Tell us how that is going for you now, playing college football. Yeah, it's definitely a different game. Guys are a lot bigger, a lot faster, but I love it. I eat, sleep, breathe football, and I'm living the dream right now, and just having a great time. And that's fantastic. We'll pass the microphone here. Elliot, you are also a member. You have 3 of these rings. You just graduated last year. Talk about, with Joe, you guys were able to go back-to-back, and then you come in your senior year, and it's time for the three-peat. Talk about, you've got the target on your back now. Now people are like, okay, Parish is back-to-back Division I champs. We've got to take these guys down. Talk for a minute about your senior season in 2021, last year's championship campaign, and how that was special to achieve the three-peat.
Well, as seniors last year, we really just felt a certain pressure on us as a class because we couldn't be the class that lost it. We couldn't be the class that lost a streak. And we just really felt so much love from the previous classes, Joe's class, and the seniors our freshman year set a great base for us. And we just wanted to win. We wanted to win. We hated to lose. That's all it was. Now, speaking of playing football in a unique environment, both of you guys were involved in football during COVID. You a little bit more so, Elliot. Talk about how strange that environment was to be trying to play football during COVID. Everybody stay healthy, not have COVID. Because in one of the interviews with Coach Novikov, he always said, we really wanted to win during COVID because everyone was going to remember the team that won the championship during COVID. So talk about that experience for a minute and how you guys were able to persevere and earn that 3rd consecutive ring. Well, actually, we were the only school and only team that didn't miss a game all season. We had 0 losses. Well, we had 1 loss, but 0 losses due to COVID. And I think that really just elevated us to success. we were all bought in as much as possible. It was strange. It was strange to say, you know, our locker room was outside. We lifted outside. But honestly, we didn't care. We just wanted to win. That's all we wanted to do.
And then being victorious tonight, or last year, then both of you guys will wrap up here. Talk a little bit about what is going through their mind right now. You guys have been on this exact same turf field. You were here just last December. Talk about what's going through their mind now as we're about 30 minutes away from kickoff and the butterflies in the stomach, even though they come into the game with only one loss. You know, as you had said, you didn't want to be the team that loses. The bubble can burst at any time. Talk a little bit about what you think is going through their brain right now. Well,
I can tell you the seniors, most of these seniors, this is their last football game ever, and I can tell walking down there, they knew it. There's just a lot of stress going through their heads right now, but I can tell they're just focusing on the win. That's all they want to do. They want to fight for Novikov. They want to fight for their team, and they just want to win. They can't lose. That's all it is.
And your projection for tonight's game, Elliot?
Parish Episcopal.
Okay. And Joe, wrap it up for us. As an offensive lineman, talk about what's going on. This offensive line has played great all season long, and what are they thinking right now as they get ready to defend and go out and try to win that fourth ring in a row?
Yeah, you know, these guys have been here before. They're definitely confident, and may I say, this is probably the best high school offensive line I've ever seen personally. So I'm sure there's a level of confidence, a level of nerves, obviously, but they know what they're here to do. They're here to take care of business. They're going to run it down their throat and protect Sawyer at all costs. So that's it.
And we'll see how it turns out. And, folks, we want to thank Elliot DeSalms and Joe Meharry for joining us tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. And let's take a look while we have a moment. We were able to get some time earlier this afternoon with Prestonwood head coach Donnie Yantis. Forrest Baldwin was able to speak with him and talk about his feelings going into tonight's state championship game.
And we're here with Parish Christian Academy head coach Donnie Yantis, head coach of the 9-2 Lions, coming into the Division I state championship game. I already see the smile coming out on your face, Coach. Congratulations on making it to the state championship game.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. Our whole PCA community is excited, and all of our players. You know, they haven't been here in 5 years, so to get here has been a challenge for us, and our kids are ready for it.
You know, as a first-year head coach making it to the state championship game, you're setting that bar high. What's been the success behind this Lions team this year?
I think kids buying in. You know, obviously the staff buying in as well, the belief, and that we came off at the beginning of the year and had a rough game in our first game, and just kind of figuring the team out. But I think just believing, and trusting. I think that's the key. When you bring in a new staff, new system, all that stuff, it's a challenge for the kids. So our seniors have really done a great job of adapting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the season a little bit. 9-2 record overall. Of course, that first game to Argyle Liberty was a loss, and then you run 7 straight until you meet Parish for the district championship. Talk about the season. What's been some of the challenges behind the season, and what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the kids and how they persevered, and they bought into what we're doing. After the first game, we just kind of figured out who we were. That first game, I wasn't sure what type of team we had in terms of our players' talent, what their strengths and weaknesses are. So we really focused on what we could be good at and putting the kids in the right spots, offensively especially, and figured out what we could do. And I figured out we're a run-play action team. So that's a great thing. Our quarterback has done a great job managing our offense and our team, and we've been good up front. And then our defense is just young, but they've gotten better each and every week, and we're excited for the opportunity.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the players at Prestonwood. Of course, it looks like everything begins and ends with A.J. Sibley. What a running back, over 2,100 yards so far this season. Talk a little bit about him and how that's driven this offense.
Well, first, he's a great kid. He's a selfless, humble young man that gives praise. He doesn't take the praise, he gives it, which is a great thing. But, he's one of the toughest running backs I've coached, and I've coached, a couple guys that played in the NFL, and he's one of those guys that, it's hard to bring down the first tackle, the first touch. So he gets a lot of his yards after contact. But our kids are, for him, it's important. Our receivers block so well downfield. And so, he's very appreciative of what the team does for him. But, yeah, absolutely. We're a running football team, and we're going to give that guy the rock. He can make things happen.
So from a defensive standpoint, for maybe some fans that haven't gotten a chance to see the Lions play so far this year, who are some players to look out for on defense?
I think the two guys you think right away is Carter Stottmeyer. He's our corner, and he's going to University of Arizona, and our junior linebacker, Hudson. Lunsford, he's awesome. I mean, so those two guys, and then up front, Nathan LaPerry, those three guys are really the core of what we do defensively.
All right, now the big question, Coach, that we've asked a lot of coaches so far. What is the key to beating that Parish Episcopal team?
Well, I think for us, it's controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball and not giving up big plays defensively, and for us, controlling the clock. You know, I think that we got to do a great job at controlling the clock and keeping their offense off the field because they're so talented. I mean, they're a talented football team. They've won 3 in a row for a reason. They're coached very well. And for us, we got to focus on us and move the chains and own the ball, you know, so turnovers and owning the line of scrimmage.
How was the week of practice this week?
Had a great week, spirited week. Kids came to work. I mean, they're not just focused on getting here. You know, our goal is to win this thing, you know, so we're going to do everything we can on the field tonight to give the kids a chance to compete with these guys.
Great. Thank you, Coach Yantis. Good luck tonight as you bring in those Prestonwood 9-2 Lions into the state championship game against the Parish Panthers.
As strong as those who support you. But we can't forget those that came before us, the group of men that laid the foundation for this program and what it's meant to this school. And we want to hear from some of them. So let's hear what some of our alumni have to say.
Wishing you all good luck and keep the streak alive. Go Panthers.
Just wanted to wish you good luck in your game against Prestonwood. Go get after them, leave it all on the field.
And Fort Pete on the way. We all got your back. The Panther community believes in you. You guys got this. Be dominant this weekend.
I just wanted to wish you guys a good luck this weekend in the state championship and go make history. Good luck. Go Panthers.
Go out there, have fun, enjoy the moment. Y'all win that game, y'all are in history forever. 4 for 4. Hashtag 4P.
Y'all's last game, so play like it is your last game and go out there, be intense, be enthusiastic, and enjoy it.
Dean here to say I'm incredibly proud of you for making it to state once again, and I expect y'all to come home with some really big rings.
Just want to say good luck this weekend. Take it one play at a time, and y'all be just fine. We know you can do it, and we're all rooting for you.
I just want to say congratulations and good luck on this weekend. You guys have a chance to do something amazing and bring home that dub. Let's go Panthers.
I just wanted to congratulate y'all on getting to the 4th consecutive state championship. Y'all go get that dub this weekend.
And folks, while we also have a moment here, that was Coach Donnie Yantis with the Prestonwood Christian Lions and some social media shout-outs to the Parish Panthers as they advance in tonight's game and play in the state championship. Now, we want to share with you an interview that I had earlier this week with Coach Dan Novikov, focusing on the victory last week over St. Thomas and tonight's championship game.
Now let's rewind a little bit here. Let's kind of get the big picture of how you got started in all this. You're a local man, played your high school ball here at St. Mark's.
Yeah.
And then walk-on at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about the walk-on experience there at Notre Dame and how that worked out for you. What made you decide to walk on and for the Fighting Irish?
You know, my dad played there, and he was
And, folks, we apologize for the technical difficulty, and now we'll get you the interview this week with Coach Novikov talking about St. Thomas and tonight's championship game against Prestonwood.
And, folks, here with Coach Dan Novikov in the moments before the state championship matchup between the Parish Panthers and the Prestonwood Christian Lions. Coach, thanks for taking some more time with us today.
Absolutely.
And going over the game last week in the state semifinal against Houston St. Thomas.
Sure.
And we'll jump right into it. A very effective game last Saturday. You walk into there. I know that we had talked in the previous interview that you may have had some slight concerns about the fact that St. Thomas had played at Tiger Field in Belton the previous week, but the 42-7 score made it sound like those concerns were unwarranted.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. You never want to play where somebody's familiar. You know, obviously they knew the lay of the land and they picked the home for a reason. They had that nice setup with the indoor and they could warm up in there. And so, yeah, I mean, it ultimately didn't end up mattering, but, certainly don't want to give anybody any type of advantage if you don't have to.
Right. And the game opens, it's a pretty even game to start. Both teams, have to give up possession on the first two possessions. Parish comes in a 3-and-out, which I'm trying to remember the last time the Panthers went 3-and-out in any game, and it's been a little bit. Mm-hmm. But they showed you a little bit there. Then you guys kicked it deep. Great punt by James Cave.
Yeah.
I mean, 61 yards into the end zone with the wind at his back. So at least you guys were able to pin the Eagles deep. And then the Eagles go 3 and out, and Parish gets a couple of first downs. And then talk about that 4th down play you guys called with Maddox Reed on 4th and 1 there at the Eagle 38.
Which one? The one we didn't get or the one we got?
The one you didn't get.
Yeah. Well, 2 things. It's less than ideal to start out going 3 and out, but I think anytime you're playing in a semifinal game, everybody's a little nervous, including the play caller and everybody else. So, that it's not ideal, but it happens. And then, the 4th and 1, just calling a heavy run play, and they got penetration, and it's not what we want to have happen, not what we expect to happen, but it happened. And the thing that I was pleased with is our kids didn't panic and bounced back and settled in and got going.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and in that game, the 3 and out and the subsequent turnover on downs. I mean, it's what we talked about before. There's 2 10-1 teams. Mm-hmm. Coming together, battling for a chance to go to Waco for the state championship game, which comes up this Friday night. Right. So you were expecting, a pretty good fight from the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, they're 10-1 for a reason, right? I mean, they're a good football team. You saw that. They got a bunch of good players. They were very good on the defensive front. The quarterback was dynamic, and, I talked about it last time, but I think people think this just somehow magically happens and that, we can just walk out there and everything's going to be okay. And it's not the case. You got to show up, you got to play every week, you got to prepare every week, or you're going to get beat.
And the preparation going into this Friday night contest, the state championship with Prestonwood, how's that looking so far? I know you talked about you look at different packages throughout the week, and how is that looking as we ramp up? Because I know it's kind of a short week since you had the Saturday afternoon game and this game's on Friday night. Does that affect things much being just one day short?
It just puts a little more pressure on you as a coach to, get everything done, and you don't have that extra day. You're short a day. So, as we sit here, it's Tuesday. We've only had Monday's practice, so we're not very far into it. But, we had a pretty good day yesterday. Prestonwood poses a lot of problems because they do a lot of different stuff defensively that makes things challenging. So you gotta figure that out. And then offensively, everybody knows they can run the football with Sibley. So, we're trying to figure out how to stop that. But, I could answer that question for you better Thursday, but, we're going into Tuesday's practice. So hopefully everything keeps trending in the right direction.
Right. And then this is a good segue to move into the matchup with Prestonwood. So Prestonwood, obviously, I would think from a TAP standpoint, has given you guys the biggest challenge so far in the season. Mm-hmm. Even though you defeated them almost 4 weeks ago, 42-14, with that outstanding game by Maddox Reed. But they do pose some problems. I mean, let's talk about their defense. How does your offense, you and offensive coordinator Matt Faulkner, how do you guys plan, for their defensive effort? And because it seems to me like the guy that you have to look out for on the defensive side of the ball is number 48, Luke McGarry. He also plays tight end for him on offense, but he's their leading tackler on defense as well.
And they're all over the place on defense, which is always hard. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I saw him line up in multiple positions.
Yeah, they have a ton of personnel groups, ton of packages. So, it's very pro style. So you got to prepare for that, which makes things challenging on the preparation front. Now, what it does do is allow you to have some big plays if you can catch them, out of gaps, which is what you saw last time with Maddox. But it's a nightmare to prepare for offensively because you got to, prepare for all the looks and all the blitzes and all that stuff. So, it's pretty complex.
So there's really no way to just put a spy to look for McGarry and take him out of the play. He just may get his few tackles and just hope that you find the right plays where you guys run the play where he isn't.
Yeah, a lot of football is just dumb luck, too. If people really knew how little, that really it is, a lot of it's just, man, that worked out great. Luck. And a lot of it's the players make it work. You can call a play, and a lot of it has to do with the guy executing the play versus the actual play that's called or the design of the play. So many plays we draw up that don't go the way they're supposed to go, but they end up working better than we thought, or, something happens where you're like, oh, that turned out all right. So, there's a lot of that to it. And then there is a lot of preparation to it too, of making sure the kids understand what they're looking at, how to adapt to it. And hopefully they can execute and recognize things and play fast.
And do you think your offensive line gives you an advantage over the Prestonwood defensive line? The offensive line back at full strength, everyone back from injury, everybody good to go. Because they were opening up huge holes for Reed in that first game against Prestonwood. So how much of an advantage do you think those 5 men up front give you over their defensive line?
Well, they're a really good offensive line. They can play with anybody. I don't know week in, week out. That's kind of the challenge I have to them is you guys need to dominate football games are won up front. I mean, it's cliche, but it's the truth. So
absolutely.
If they play well, we play well. If they don't, we don't. And so it's always the question every week. I'd like to think they can play with anybody. I know they can play with anybody. It's just
and they have.
There's 17-year-old, 15, 17-year-old kids that you're relying on them. So they're temperamental.
Well, we're looking forward to bringing a fantastic game on Game On Sports, and hopefully all of you can join us Friday night.
Thank you.
Best of luck, and here's to the 4-Pete.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And, folks, that was Coach Dan Novikov, head coach of the Parish Panthers, with his thoughts on tonight's championship game. And, Jim, while we have a moment, let's talk about tonight's impact players. One player each from Prestonwood and from Parish that you think is going to make a big impact in tonight's game.
Well, for Prestonwood, I got to, it's the A.J. Sibley show. And I mean, we talked about it in the pregame, and I think that kid's got to produce big for them to come up on the top side tonight. And for Parish, I mean, there's just so many tools to look at, and Sawyer Anderson is obviously the kid that's gonna kind of make things roll. But I think you're gonna see somebody who you're gonna see somebody produce that hasn't produced on a level yet that just shows up, and I don't really know who that player would be at this point.
And now, Forrest, if you're available and you can hear us, Forrest, give us your two impact players here for tonight on one from each team that you think will make the difference in tonight's game. And, okay, we'll have Forrest for you in just a minute. And, folks, and here's who I'm looking at tonight. I like to go with dark horses and these type of things. I think your impact player on defense, if he's going to make an impact in this game and put this in the favor of Prestonwood in any way, it's going to be number 48, Luke McGarry, both on offense and defense. He's going to have to play tight end very effectively, make some catches there, get away from Seth Scott and Cooper Malin for some yardage, and then also make tackles on defense. And my dark horse for Parish, the man I think is going to make the difference tonight, is the senior Chase Burton. He's been coming back very hard the last 4 or 5 games after injury. He had a great game last week against Houston St. Thomas, and I think he's my impact player to watch. And now, Forrest, your two impact players tonight, one for Prestonwood, one for Parish.
All right, guys, my impact players tonight for Prestonwood, obviously A.J. Sibley, the ball carrier for the Lions. That kid is a beast, over 2,100 yards. Parish has got to find his top them, and the state championship is in A.J. Sibley's arms. On defense, Kim Gary, linebacker. They're leading tackling the kids slice of football out of that 3-4 defense. Offensively, Sawyer Anderson's my pick. Yeah, the kid's a leader. He's a sophomore. Yeah, I would say he's under his belt already. Time for him to shine. I also like you got dark horse. Chase Burton as well. Time for a game there. Defensively, give me Daniel Jenner, guys. Back to you.
All right, and Jim, your 3 keys to victory tonight for Parish.
Take just the same thing. Work the game plan. Take care of the ball and play defense. And I mean, if they can stop the run, if they can figure out how to keep Sibley in check off the line, I think they have this thing in hand.
And Forrest, your 3 keys to victory tonight for the Panthers.
Control the gaps, linebackers and safeties fly up.
And we're having some issues getting Forrest on the field. My 3 keys to victory, I'm going to take the Prestonwood side of this. Prestonwood has 3 things they need to do in order to take Parish down tonight. Number 1, A.J. Sibley has to have at least a 250-yard game. He's got to run very effectively. He's going to have to run for at least 250 yards and at least 3 touchdowns. McGuire Martin, the quarterback, he's going to have to be effective as well. He's going to have to complete at least 85% of his passes, and they're going to have to get at least 1, if not 2 touchdown passes on offense. And the third key, and I'm going to borrow it from you, Jim, because you use it all the time, Prestonwood is going to have to steal at least 2 possessions in this game. They're going to have to find ways to shut Parish down and steal not only 1 but 2 possessions in this game, whether it's turnover on downs, interception, fumble. And if they can do all 3 of those things, Prestonwood might have a shot tonight to dethrone the 3-time defending champions. And now, folks, we'll take a moment here, and our final segment here, we'll close it out. And, Jim, your prediction on the score for tonight's game.
I'm not a prognosticator, but my thought is Parish, I think, just runs away with this. I think they have something in the bag to put Prestonwood at bay, and I think they're just going to come out from the get-go and just flat get after it.
And I would have to agree. I think there's just too many tools in the arsenal for Parish tonight. My final score prediction, they played 4 weeks ago. It was 42-21 Parish, or 42-14 Parish, excuse me. I'm going to give each one of them an extra touchdown tonight. I think your final score here tonight at Waco ISD Stadium, Parish 49, Prestonwood 21, and your Parish Panthers will walk away with their 4th consecutive state championship ring. Well, folks, that wraps it up here for us tonight in the pregame show. We want to thank you for joining us. We also want to thank our guests, Joe Meharry and Elliot DeSalams. We want to thank Forrest Baldwin down on field level now, and hopefully we'll get the communication cleared up with him. Jim, we appreciate you being here, and most importantly, folks, we thank all of you for joining us here tonight. And there's only one thing left to do, and that's to tell you what time it is. And for that, we're going to go down to Forrest Baldwin to close us out. Forrest? Don't have Forrest signal, folks, but as Forrest would want to say, it's time for Friday night football in Texas. So, folks, stay with us as the TAPS Division I State Championship game is coming up next, right here on Game On Sports.
They running right after me. Yeah. Cause I'm number one, so that means everyone come after me. Hey. I'm at the top and they pray that I fall. Call me LeVar, the way that I ball. They want a little, but I need it all. Yeah, yeah. Had to finesse through the matrix, I'm here to take it. Beat all the odds like we just gambled in Vegas. We gonna make it, it's so amazing. Gotta stay real through the fakeness. People like seasons, they changing. That's just a part of the greatness. Greatness, greatness. That's just a part of the greatness. Chasing the Benjamin Franklin, they was all waiting. I had to go out and take it. Take it, take it. I had to go out and take it. Chasing the Benjamin Franklin, determination. That's just a part of the greatness. Going hard on my day off like it's game 7 of the playoffs. I cannot lay off, I do not play soft. Hard to the end, put my heart on the line cause I know I'ma win. Ain't no stopping us, I ain't trying to be popular. When I'm popping up, get your binoculars. On the top is us, green light to success, ain't no stopping us. And this is the product of fame, everyone knowing your name. I cannot change, humble remains, I'm just here to game. Remember they treated me lame, stayed in my lane, never backed up. Now we back up, better back up or I act up in here. Elevator going up this year, just for the times they want us here. Greatness, greatness, that's just a part of the greatness. Chasing the Benjamin Franklin, they was all waiting. I had to go out and take it, take it, take it. I had to go out and take it. Chasing the Benjamin Franklin, determination, that's just a part of the greatness. That's just a part of the That's just a part of the greatness.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Parish Panther Championship Football. You are looking live at Waco ISD Stadium in Waco, Texas, as Game On Sports Network brings you coverage of tonight's TAPS Division I State Championship game between the Prestonwood Christian Lions and your Parish Panthers. Alongside Jim Dixon and our sideline reporters Jeremy Beedling and Forrest Baldwin, this is Brian Shackelford welcoming you to tonight's broadcast at Waco ISD Stadium. And Jim, after 14 weeks of high school varsity football, we have finally arrived at our destination. The Parish Panthers conquered a grueling non-district schedule, going 5-1 in that stretch, losing only on a last-second field goal to South Oak Cliff in a game that the Panthers admit they should have won. Following non-district play, the Panthers breezed through district play undefeated, beating their district opponents by an average of 36 points per game and culminating that run with their 4th straight TAPS Division I District I championship. defeating the Prestonwood Christian Lions 42-14. Tonight, the Panthers face off in the TAPS Division I State Championship against these same Prestonwood Christian Lions with a chance to win a 4th straight Division I state crown and cement their place in the annals of Texas high school football history.
Well, and we've talked about this, and the state championship goes through DFW, and here we are in Waco doing something we could have done in our own zip code, and this is a matchup that we kind of set aside as a potential for state championship early on in the season, and Parish has had to overcome from a very, very difficult schedule. They played through on the first 5 non-district games. Even with the loss, they played through outstanding, and just showed what they're made of. And here we sit at the state championship, and these guys have basically geared this thing up since the get-go, and it didn't appear to me to be that long ago. But when you said 14 weeks, it's been that long.
And folks, we welcome you in as we now have to end our broadcast stream here and transfer you over to TAPS Network TV, as the TAPS Network TV network has exclusive rights to broadcast the championship game live. So if you wish to watch tonight's championship game live on TV, please visit www.tapstvnetwork.com, and you'll have to sign in there, pay a small fee to view the game, and you'll be able to watch it live. We, however, at Game On Sports will be recording tonight's game, and it will be available for viewing later this evening or possibly tomorrow. But for right now, we invite you to transfer over to www.tapstvnetwork.com for live coverage of tonight's broadcast. And, folks, we'll be right back with our recorded stream right after this.